I'm going to invite on stage Alex Lapusan, CEO and founding partner at ZTech and Vice President of the Romanian Association of Software Industry, who is going to pick the brains of some very interesting guests we have today. And with this panel, we'll kick off all the festivities on this stage, so I'll see you soon. Take it away, Alex.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We've got 1 hour, and we've got a hell of a merry-go-round. We've got 8 people here representing 4 countries. We are going to be talking about what these countries are doing here in Romania to impact on our startup environment. We're going to be talking about their expertise in the Romanian market and in business in general. So please do not be shy, ask questions. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but you'd better have a smart one ready. Just a couple of words about myself, because not everybody is probably familiar with me. I'm in the software business for almost 20 years now. 13 of them were dedicated to building my own software company. Through ZTech, we also ended up doing investments in a couple of startups, US startups, UK startups, and a Dutch one and a Romanian one. So, of course, the role of VP of International Markets at ANIS was kind of natural, and I'm sorry that I did not step in earlier. We're trying to also help the startup ecosystem here in Romania do better. And it's a pretty tough job because, as you know, more than maybe 90% of the IT income is based on services, not on products. So it is a battle that we have also to fight and win. So first of all, I would like to thank How2Web for inviting us here and having an ANIS moment. And I'm going to say a couple of words about ANIS. Again, maybe you are not familiar with this association. Right now, ANIS is close to turning 18, I think, so we're going to be able to drive and drink. We have about 100 members from Romania, 100 IT companies, which is pretty cool. They together have a little bit over 30,000 employees and a turnover of 2.5 billion euros. We're trying to also get new companies to join us, because together we can improve the laws, the regulations, the way we work, and do a better job together. We're also open to startups, where they don't have to pay a fee, a right to become members. And they also need to understand that if they do not get out of the office and they do not speak and we do not act together, we're always going to end up complaining about how big companies, big guys are taking the money and government support and all the rest. So we are inviting all the startups to also spend some time discussing with ANIS people here at the event. Back to our main reason for being here. As I said, we have about 60 minutes, and this is going to be intense. Let's start with the first 2 guests. I'm inviting Joshua Burke. He's a commercial attaché and deputy senior commercial officer at the US Embassy in Bucharest. And Charles Chongo, he's representing Charles Breeze Associates. He's the owner there, and he's going to be talking a lot about taxes. So that's going to be pretty interesting, I bet. Guys. So we're going to start with, the mics are on, and you can start using it. So Joshua, we spent a couple of minutes discussing before the event. I'm just going to jump straight to the point. You're going to be talking about how governments can help startups, and especially how governments can help Romanian startups. And this is a very interesting topic, especially that you are representing US Embassy.
Well, sure. Thank you so much, Alex, and thanks for How2Web, and thanks to ANIS for having us here. I know that our ambassador was here this morning, and he was really grateful for the opportunity to be here. So how can the governments help startups? First of all, let me just say that I have also started companies in the past. I have invested in startup companies in the past. I have a social venture that I'm working on now. And so if I'm speaking, it's not only from my perspective as a diplomat, but also I have some experience from the mistakes that I've made and from the experience in my investment and entrepreneurial set as well. So. Usually when people ask that question, how can governments support startups, it's you get 2 answers. 1, lower taxes, and 2, stay out of the way. Right? So while I appreciate that sentiment, I could say that there's a little bit more that governments can do. And I like to think of it in 3 things. Thing number 1 is infrastructure. Thing 2 is policy. and thing 3 would be financing and financial benefits. So in terms of policy, governments need to create laws and create a framework that allows companies to fail without allowing the founders to fail, if that makes sense. So when we talk about innovation in the US, really what we're talking about is getting the bad ideas out of your system as quick as possible so that then the good ideas can rise to the top. But if you, as a founder or as an investor, are tied to your bad idea and you don't have the opportunity to write off the taxes from your losses, or you don't have the opportunity to
you're going to close shop.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. So you have to be able to support failure. So failure needs to be a policy to make sure that, again, founders are not the ones who fail. It's companies that do, but the founders need to be able to continue and move on to the next project.
So basically what you're saying is that you're trying to do a cultural transfer.
Well, the culture has already transferred. Right. I mean, so right now, Charles is from San Francisco, so he can talk about how the Silicon Valley and San Francisco attitude of startups, how that has infected the world. I mean, that's why one of the reasons we're here today is because of the great organizations that have come from San Francisco and some of the talent that's come from here to San Francisco. So this culture transformation is already starting. Right. So on the infrastructure front, let me just point out 2 things real quick. So Romania is known for infrastructure in 2 ways. It has the best infrastructure and it has the worst infrastructure in all of Europe. And I'm completely serious about this. So on one side you have the worst infrastructure, which is the road and rail network. The fact that it takes 4 hours to go 200 kilometers is a reality, and that is incredibly harmful for business and for industry. But on the other extreme, you have the best infrastructure in the fiber optic network that Romania has invested in over the last 25 years. And so, and for many of the tech companies that are here, it's that fiber optic network and that infrastructure that they have invested, that the government has invested in, that can create this enthusiasm in the marketplace here.
Well, we're also thankful that we got quoted in the U.S. elections with the good one, with the speed of the internet and not with the road infrastructure, luckily for us. I know that the U.S. Embassy is present in Romania with a lot of events focused on startups, and it would be maybe beneficial for everybody for you to cover that topic and explain a little bit about these events.
Sure. So we try to get involved. Again, I think for us it's really useful to get out of the office and make sure that we understand what's happening in the local environment. And the best way to do that is take off the tie, get out of our walled embassy, and go attend events like this, attend meetups. And so we frequently will sponsor or participate in meetups and happy hours in the evening. We were the co-organizers with a couple of other embassies of the Innotech conference that took place a few weeks ago. We participate in several different events and forums similar to this. And then we have other pitch competitions that we will organize throughout the country. And while not official, I'll give you a sneak preview that we're going to be launching something either later this year or early next year. It's a pitch competition with only a handful of people invited, maybe 20, 25 startups, where you have to pitch to a U.S. Marine. So you get to look them in the eye, they get to look you in the eye, and you need to make sure that you're prepared for your 90 seconds or 2 minutes to face a U.S. Marine. So those are some of the things.
So much for the buzzwords presentation, so much for that. I wouldn't go that direction with the Marine, right?
You better bring it.
So because you've been involved in so many startups like Innotech and Meetups and Entrepreneur of the Year and so many, did you spot a trend in terms of the interest of Romanian IT professionals for products, for starting their own business? How do you see that? Are we doing better? Are we doing the same? Do you have more hopes for us?
I mean, I would say there's always hope, especially when it comes to talent.
It doesn't sound good when you start with that.
Well, there's hope in the sense that the future looks better and looks brighter than it is today. So that's what I mean by that. The The challenge in this space right now is that Romania is known for talent, and so many companies are coming to the country and all over the country, not just in Bucharest, but in Brașov, in Cluj, in Iași, in Constanța. So there's a lot going on in all throughout the country, and so there's going to be a war for talent. Now, how does Romania benefit from that war for talent so that everyone can really benefit? It has to invest more into schools. So formalized schools and even coding in the elementary schools, but also informal schools like the Program 42 and some of these others that are related to, but sort of outside of the normal traditional university system. So people are learning how to code, people are learning these skill sets that are critical.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and Anis is also supporting that movement. We're trying to make a difference. We'll see. Right now, we're also expecting a law that's going to help companies finance education, so we hope that things are going to be looking better and better. Charles, you are a tax expert. And a lot of people starting their own business, engineers, will probably not know and not care that much about taxes at the beginning because they don't have the money and they don't care about taxes. Can you please tell us why they should care about that, especially if they are planning to have an international launch, an international business?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I'd like to give my thanks for being invited to speak this morning. I'm very pleased to be on the panel with Mr. Joshua Burke with the embassy and Anis as well. So thank you, Alexandru. As a company is growing and as a company wants to take on investment, there's always the question mark of the company growing greenfield, your ability to grow and prosper in your own marketplace and the size of that marketplace. And at a certain point, there's a question of, will you branch out? And being a technology company, you're necessarily de facto worldwide. Once you start to branch out or you're starting to take on more monies, you're always going to have the issue when an investor is going to come in at a certain point, is going to conduct diligence, or you're going to exit at a certain point. And unfortunately, taxation is a part of life. And if you've got difficulties or you've got problems historically with the company, these can come back to haunt you when you're going to exit. So very important to get your structure set up properly from the beginning. Those can that can really make a big difference in the future when you're going to exit.
So when is a good moment to talk to a tax specialist as a startup?
Usually the evolution is the first person that is coming into the U.S., the first person that's spoken to is the visa specialist. The visa specialist or the commercial attorney. The individuals are thinking about setting up the boxes, and then typically the visa attorney says, listen, you need to talk to Charles, or the commercial attorney says you need to talk to Charles from the beginning. And it's really, really important when you're a technology company, because if you do not get your intellectual property buttoned up correctly, or you don't understand the evolution of value within your company, it's going to be a lot harder to adjust your structure as you move forward. Much more difficult as opposed to the beginning. So from the beginning, you should talk to your tax advisor.
Okay, that's a good point. Can you also share a little bit of information on how you ended up here in Romania at this conference?
So I have been, I've worked and lived in Central and Eastern Europe for 7 years. I lived in Prague for 3 years. I lived in Bucharest for 4 years. My wife is Romanian.
That's a good reason.
So I'm back and forth quite often. I've got a firm here, Botea Charles Bridge, that we've opened in 2014, as well as offices in San Francisco. And we support companies coming into the U.S. from Romania, from countries worldwide, as well as U.S. companies that are going abroad.
So basically, it's going to be much easier for a Romanian company to talk to you because you're already seeing the two sides of the coin, Bucharest and San Francisco, right?
Yes, there's definitely a common understanding and a common interest, and understanding culture is very, very important.
Cool. As I said, we don't have a lot of time. I would appreciate if you guys have some questions for our guests here. Do not hesitate. Anybody? I cannot see anything. Oh, I see a hand over there. So, yeah, speak up and I'll...
Okay. How important would you say is it in the U.S. culture local presence for doing business in the US?
Just a second. The question was how important it is for
US culture,
a U.S. culture.
for the US business culture, to interact with companies in the US and not directly from Romania.
Okay.
I mean, I would say that having an entity in the U.S. you can set up virtually right now. You can set up a Delaware corporation, probably in short order. With a couple of lawyers, you can set up a mailbox in some large apartment building or something, and you don't even have to be there. But that's not really doing business, right? So business at the end of the day is about it's buying and selling, and it's about connections between individuals. And so if you're not there physically, then you're missing out on the opportunity to meet the people at conferences like this, to attend networking receptions, and so having presence there is important. You as a founder don't have to be there all the time, but you can have co-founders or partners or employees or something. But you got to be present. I mean, I think it's Andy Warhol who said that success is sometimes 85% of success is just showing up, right? So take that to heart and make sure you show up.
I've never seen a situation where I've ever seen any startup be financed in the U.S. without having a relationship with the VCs or with the angels. You have to have a physical presence there. You have to be bumping into these people in the coffee shops, updating them, hey, how the company's doing, where we've got traction. It's always relationship based. From another question mark, I know multinationals, for instance, Apple will not even begin to do business with you unless you are next door. They want you absolutely there 24/7. They want that close relationship. They want the ability to have that meeting. From a tax perspective, you need to be really careful with how you're running your operations. I've got a situation where I've got a Hungarian company that's got a U.S. company on top. All the business is being conducted out of Hungary, which essentially how they're operating is causing the millions of plus dollars of gross revenue to very strongly be taxable in Hungary. So you need to be really careful about when you're in and the types of substance you have to make certain that you're doing it correctly.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, guys. As I said, we're a very tight schedule, so thank you for being here, and I will ask everybody to give a big round of applause. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Okay, so we're moving on. We're moving to Israel right now, and I'm going to invite Matan Safran, who's the commercial attaché, head of economic and trade mission to Romania for Israel, and David Engel, who's the CIO and co-founder of OSSN. Welcome, guys. So let's jump straight to the topic. I mean, Israel, it's definitely a spot where we look and we see impressing startups. And there's some magic happening over there, because US has like the largest market, so yeah, and the money is there, right? We're looking maybe at UK, we're looking at Canada as well. But when you think about Israel, I'm thinking Waze, I'm thinking a lot of Zen and a lot of other companies that come from there. So can you share a little bit of insight on why is that happening? What's happening there? Do you have a different mentality? Do you have a different, what makes you tick?
So I'll start with thanking you, Anis, and the organizers for having us. I'm very happy to be here. I think that you can summarize the Israeli ecosystem of innovation with two legs. One is the mentality of the people. Everything in Israel comes out of a necessity. We don't have natural resources. We are not in a very friendly environment, and we are a closed market. So we were always forced to innovate, to find creative solutions for energy, for water, and for security. And the people, all the people are going through a very similar process of going to high school and then 3 years in the army. And the army, some of the technological units are very much developed and they are training the people. So the people who are going out of these technological units come out after 4 years, 3 or 4 years of service with a lot of information, with a lot of responsibility behind them, and what we call thinking out of the box. So they go with that to university, and then they get virtually hijacked by the big companies, either Israeli or multinationals. So this is about the process. Another very, very important thing concerning the mentality, and I think Joshua mentioned it, is the attitude towards failure. In Israel, failure is a value. In Israel, if you didn't fail, you don't have experience. I mean, I had a very influential former VC from Israel visiting here, and he told me, Matan, when I'm going through CVs and portfolios of startup companies, if I don't see 2 or 3 failures in the CV, I'm throwing it away. I want to see that you failed, because you learn from failure. And that brings me to the second issue. One is the mentality. The second issue is the involvement of the government. Like you said, we are not the US. We don't have such a big presence of international VCs and private equity. So the government steps in. The government takes the biggest risk in the initial seed stage of the company when the entrepreneur has only a presentation. And the government came up with a program to finance startups where 85% of the funding comes from the government and only 15% from private equity. And there are in Israel 20 incubators that are governmental initiative but privately managed. And this system creates an ongoing process of feeding the market with startups.
It's quite impressive. What can I say? First of all, again, I think it's a big difference in culture, because yes, it is getting transferred in Romania, but again, here failing, it's still not yet a virtue. We are learning to accept it first. Maybe we're still stuck at that level. We'll see about that. You were mentioning before that we started that Israel is present with this economic mission since only 44 countries, and somehow Romania is on the list. I feel good about that, but why is that?
So the economic and trade mission within the Israeli embassy is actually powered by the Ministry of Economy. I'm not a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I'm part of a chain of 44 economic missions around the globe that are placed either in places where the volume of the trade is the highest or the potential of the trade is the highest, which is the case for Romania. Now, I think also coming back to some of the things that Joshua mentioned, he talked about the infrastructure of the fiber optics, and he talked about talent. I think that the human capital in Romania is extraordinary. The potential of what Romania could achieve with the ideas you have here, with the smart young people motivated, with the academic research that is done here, the sky is the limit. The future is indeed bright.
Well, thank you for that. I can wait to see a lot of the results on that, hopefully sooner than later. Last, but maybe not least, I'd say probably it's one of the most interesting topics that we covered, is the fact that you are preparing a big announcement and a big launch in November for a financing program, right? Can you share a bit more about that?
Yes. The Israeli and Romanian government signed in 2014 what is called bilateral R&D agreement. This bilateral R&D agreement was actually, the implementation plan was signed late June this year, and we are planning to launch the first call for proposals by the end of November. The idea is that companies on both sides, in all scales, from startups to grown companies who are doing commercial R&D, will have the opportunity to work together towards an innovative product, and they will be funded by both governments. It's a very interesting process where after the launch of the first call, each side will have 3 months to find a counterpart and to sign a consortium agreement, which will be approved by committees on both sides, the Office of the Chief Scientist in Israel and NHSA here. And then the qualified joint ventures will get funded from both governments. The idea is to develop together a joint venture of an innovative product.
It's quite impressive. Can you also share like terms of the financing, like how much they are going to get?
In Israel, there is no limit to the financing and no limit to the sector.
I like it.
I mean, no limit. It depends on how you can prove that your idea is worthwhile. To take it to more of practical terms, I think that in Israel it can get up to $600,000. In Romania, it's dependent on NHSA, and they are still evaluating it, and I'm waiting for more information from them. So as soon as I will get the information, I will talk about it in other events, and I will publicize it, and we will work together to have joint success.
Thank you. David, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit of information on how you ended up working here in Romania and doing business here?
Well, it was a close country for us to come from Israel. But no, seriously, first of all, thank you for having me here. Our company, it's a startup, which was a startup some years ago, which developed some idea in Israel, actually, how to get businesses faster and better to their consumers. It's actually, if you see it a lot here in Romania, it's a star numbers, and we call ourselves One Smart Star. This is the OSSN's coming from. After a pilot of 2 years in Israel, which was very successful, we decided to actually expose the idea and the business worldwide, and we're looking for first countries to start with, and we choose Romania. The same basis as Matan said, that we realized that Romania is an open country, developing country, open-minded, young, a lot of early adapters. And we did launch the product here, which was very successful. We've been very successful in the last 5 years of operation here, with a lot of help that we received from the embassy as well. First of all, when getting into new territories, like to find out who is going to be your partners here, how to identify the partners. And for us, partners are, for example, the mobile operators, the infrastructure, how to build a system here in Romania. And the second part is actually building up the business partnership with real businesses, with the top-notch businesses, because we are working with banks, insurance companies, medical centers, and so forth. So the whole idea was, yes, Romania was a start, and basically we are now expanded our activity into more than 20 countries worldwide. We are developing application based on this. The application is done both in Israel. The application is developed also in other countries. As it's a worldwide thing, it's a worldwide operation. We're working in several territories.
How did you find doing business in Romania? How easy it was? Did you feel any bureaucratic problems or?
Well, nothing is easy in a new country. Romania, from one hand, was coming from the old system, getting into new system. So in one part, you find a lot of rigidity, a lot of conservatism. On the other part, there was a lot of open mind, a lot of people with open mind, which try and open and work with us together in order to develop the business. And success is not only because of us, but because we had good partners here in Romania. So it was good. It was good experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Guys, do you have any questions for our guests here? I see a couple of hands.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Marius. I run a company which evaluates and manages precisely the human capital you have mentioned, which I think is very important in companies working right now in Romania. Historically, there has been significant investment from Israel to Romania in the last years especially. And I think as we look at these economic ties which are getting stronger and stronger, and as, let's say, Israeli culture as a startup nation is beginning to influence the Romanian one, I think it would be important for us to understand what are the major threats you feel Israel is facing right now as a startup nation.
That's a tough one.
Yes. I think that one of the main debates in Israel is, in Israel it's very common to work towards what we call exit, towards an acquisition. Only in 2015 we had acquisitions summing up to $9 billion. Now, this is great. You know, Waze being bought by Google, a lot of money, a lot of buzz. The government gets huge ROI on the investment. I didn't get to the model, but whomever is interested in the model, I can talk to him. It's a very interesting model. What I'm referring to is the debate of to have a mentality of acquisitions or to have a mentality of developing big companies like Apple, like Microsoft. We have in Israel a few. We have Checkpoint, we have Teva, and they are great and they are employing a lot of people, but there are not a lot of really, really, really big companies. So this is a huge debate where some of the opinions in the market say that it's not enough to be a startup nation and develop ideas. You need to have, in the threats of the global economy that we are living today, we need to develop sustainable big companies that will employ a lot of people and will do all their operations within Israel and not just like multinationals that are coming and opening an R&D center in Israel. So this is one of the big threats that we are facing. Another very interesting, I don't know if it's a threat, but we discovered natural gas. And I started with saying that we didn't have natural resources. So how will that affect the economy? And that is also a very big question mark.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, guys. I hope we get to see you more at events in Romania.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to Canada right now. So I'm inviting Bradwin Nybok and Mihai Toma. Bradwin is a senior trade commissioner at Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Canada, and Mihai is the general manager of Trilon, TSF, a company that was founded in 1932. That's impressive. And your history with that company is also impressive. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
So, shortly and very quickly, what Canada has to offer to Romanian startups?
Well,
What's in it for us?
I was going to say that's a big question, but one I'll gladly touch upon. First of all, I want to touch upon a theme that I think some of my counterparts raised this morning. And one of those was in terms of the role of government in terms of the developing policy that's conducive for startups and enabling them to grow in a good environment. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about there. Canada's been in the news recently, both here and across the European Union. This past weekend, of course, Canada and the European Union signed off on a comprehensive economic and trade agreement, essentially a Canada-EU free trade agreement, but one that goes far beyond traditional trade in goods and also covers areas such as services and labor mobility and the like. In the context of Romania, that's got an immediate impact, or will have an immediate impact in terms of the export of products and services in the IT space, which already exist into Canada, but the tariffs on those goods, for example, are going to drop immediately upon provisional application from currently a rate of 7% down to 0. So an immediate benefit which will help foster the movement of goods and services in the IT space. So one policy side there. Another element that I think I've certainly heard about from a number of people here in Romania has to do with visas, of course. And the very good news that a plan is in place and a plan has been agreed to, which will enable Canada's visa for Romanians to be dropped for those seeking to visit Canada, with the phased-in approach beginning in May 2017 and ultimately by the end of 2017, visa-free travel for all Romanians to Canada. Of course, removing that kind of barrier can only facilitate interaction between individuals looking to do business in Canada, and certainly startup companies that want to have opportunities there as well. So those are some of the policy pieces that have been put in place. On top of that, Canada's launched a specialized program, in fact, that's looking to attract top talent and top startups to consider Canada as a destination. And this is a program that's called it's got a very simple name called the Startup Visa Program. And this, in fact, refers to, is trying to attract companies that wish to establish a permanent base in Canada. And rather than involving government in terms of trying to select who's likely to be successful in that regard, the program is built around startups making their pitch to professionals, be it the angel investors, be it venture capital investors, or be it even in terms of the number of accelerator communities across Canada, and seeking their support in order to establish a base in Canada and to help develop their businesses there. This innovative program has been launched, and essentially it provides a stepping stone for startups that want to go beyond their market where they're at now and grow within the North American market. This provides a ready opportunity. So those are some of the areas that where I think those policy developments are in place, which will help startups grow and prosper and ultimately find a good landing spot in Canada. Finally, I wanted to circle back a little bit to CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. I mentioned as well, one of the features there has to do with enabling labor mobility. And I wanted to touch upon what that has meant, for example, because that portion of the agreement is in fact mirrors what was done with the North American Free Trade Agreement, which has been in place now for 25 years between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, in fact, more than 25 years now. And one element there in terms of labor mobility, and in fact, has been really the seamless movement of professionals in the IT space moving between those three countries and allowing companies in one of those three markets to essentially draw upon the expertise and allow their people to move back and forth seamlessly as needed and able to grow their business and draw upon the expertise where it's needed at that moment. So it's that model which we're looking to see, which is in fact built into the Canada-EU agreement, and ultimately will hopefully foster that kind of mobility, which will make it easier for companies to grow and prosper. So that's what we're doing.
That was fast and a lot of good information over there. Though personally, I'm not that glad that the good startups that we have are all thinking about moving out. But yes, it's easy to go where the money is, right? And especially that Canada is so close to the other neighbor in the south, also it makes it very attractive. And I personally have friends that have went this road.
Indeed, I mean, certainly. Yeah, I suppose to a certain extent that's something of a criticism, I suppose, as well, that while we're certainly providing opportunities and seeking to draw upon good talent, and we talked about the tremendous human capital that exists here in Romania and certainly elsewhere in Southeastern Europe, but I think as well we can talk as well some of the programs that have been done through Canadian embassies across the European Union, and towards, I guess, more of a partnership model in terms of bringing together companies from Canada and from EU countries to draw upon funding opportunities, be they provided through the EU Horizon 2020, for example, in terms of the funding available there, or through similar funding models in Canada, but allowing for creating the right atmosphere for partnerships and allowing perhaps some organic growth to take place and remain in the market where it started. So I sort of say there's an element of support both going into Canada and certainly maintaining operations here, but with partnership with Canadian expertise and talent.
Right, that's definitely going to the right direction. But first of all, we are happy no more visas soon. That's number one. Mihai, I really want to know a lot about you and your Canadian experience, because you are with Trilon for so many years. I think it's close to 20 right now, or 18?
Yeah, 19.
Right. So please tell us about that, how that went. You met the guys in '97.
Yes.
You ended up to be not only a country manager here, but to actually provide more than just engineering, just development, but also
strategy. Yes. So actually, the model was evolved as years passing. So the initial investment here was done by this Canadian company, company called Trilon. When TAW come here and developed the first mobile network in Romania called Connex, if you remember. So it was a Canadian investment by TAW. So that was the moment of starting up. Okay, the model was developed in time, like in the beginning, we are using local resources for installation and doing the jobs, but under the Canadian surveillance and managing. So that was the model when we Romanians start the learn process, when we start learning the best practices and the management stuff, and all this was done internally, because of course in that period of time, if some of you remember, wasn't so many opportunities here in Romania. So that's the reason we remain linked together. Also, the Canadian owners saw the potential of the Romanian entity. And also we developed through the years all kind of projects all over around the world, starting from Canada to Afghanistan. Led by Canadians and operational done by Romanian resources all over the places. Right now we are doing engineering for all over the world in the same model, using sales representative and business development locally. But the main quarter of the operations are here in Romania for US market, Canadian market, UK market, and European market, of course.
Would you say it was like a very open-minded management there, or would you say that you guys were pushing hard to get that credibility going?
No, it's a combination. And if you're asking me personally, my predecessors talking about failure, what can I tell you? It's about communication. That the most important thing is a cultural issue with the communication issues. Once you pass that, and once you have some failure during the time, of course, you learn in time to pass the fear feeling, because talking about failure is talking about fear. Once you start learning how to pass the fear feeling, that's things are going to be better and better.
So I'll take it that we just need to be more courageous, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you guys.